When most of us hear the phrase AI art, uh, a really specific image kind of pops into our heads. We picture someone just sitting at a laptop, opening a little text box, and hastily typing something like, I don't know, cool space birds in a cyberpunk city.
Yeah, exactly. You hit enter, wait 10 seconds, and just accept whatever the digital vending machine spits out.
Right. And for anyone who values actual craft, that supposed zero-friction process feels, well, pretty hollow.
Which perfectly explains the skepticism so many people harbor toward generative tools. If the only human input is a 10-second daydream and a handful of keystrokes, calling it a masterpiece feels like a massive stretch.
We just assume there is no real friction, no deliberate curation, and certainly no agonizing over technique.
But that vending machine assumption is exactly what we are dismantling today in this deep dive.
Yes, because we are looking at a project that completely shatters that illusion of lazy text-to-image output. Our focus today is a 2023 piece by SurR.Ai called The Power of Destiny.
Right, which serves as gate I, like the opening entry, of a larger 7-part series known as the Subtle Seven.
To really unpack this, we are pulling from a pretty fascinating stack of sources. We have the formal museum catalog entry, the artist's highly detailed 8-step production chronology, and some deep literary commentary.
We also have the visual specifications and even the artist's private notes on their actual methodology.
So the mission for this deep dive is to give you a completely new lens to view generative art, especially if you are listening and you're tired of the endless, frictionless AI slop filling up your social feeds.
Yeah, it's going to be incredibly refreshing. We're going to expose the invisible, painstaking human labor hiding behind these pixels.
Because reading through these notes, the process here looks less like a vending machine and much more like a master sculptor carefully chipping away at a block of marble. Except the marble is made of algorithms.
And the chisel is constructed out of ancient philosophy.
Exactly.
And really, the best place to start that excavation is at the very beginning of the chronology. Long before a single pixel was generated or a generative model was even open.
Right, because the entire foundation of this artwork is actually strictly linguistic. It begins with this deeply complex act of translation.
And we are not talking about translating a simple prompt here.
No, not at all. The artist started by translating a dense 1990 Russian philosophical text. It was written by Avessalom Podvodnyy, and it's titled The Bill of Rights and Actual Possibilities.
Which is quite the starting point.
I have to admit, seeing a 1990 Russian philosophical treatise as step one in an AI art workflow threw me entirely. Like, how does a document like that even connect to a modern visual algorithm?
Well, it serves as the thematic anchor. The artist translated this text from Russian into English specifically to extract 7 core themes.
And those became the 7 foundational pillars for the entire anthology, right?
Exactly. So for Gate I, the power of destiny, the theme they extracted from Podvodny's text was to stand before God and be accountable for one's life.
Wow. That is a massive, heavy theological proposition.
It really is.
Attempting to force a machine to spit out an image that captures standing before God to be accountable, that seems almost impossible.
And the artists understood that difficulty perfectly, which is why they didn't just immediately jump to generating visuals. They treated that extracted theme as a writing prompt for themselves first.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they actually drafted multiple candidate poems in English, adopting the specific, highly complex style of the Russian futurist poet Vladimir Khlebnikov.
The sources mention that Khlebnikov treats time not just as a way to measure the passing of a day, but as an actual physical, ontological structure that governs destiny.
Yes, time is a tangible force.
He also relies on what the commentary calls an apophatic limit. I struggled with that term a bit. Is an apophatic limit basically the theological equivalent of Voldemort, like approaching a supreme being that is he who must not be named?
That is a highly colloquial but actually fairly accurate way to look at it.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Apophatic theology is the practice of describing God, or the ultimate absolute, only by what it is not, or by refusing to name it directly, because any human name would limit its infinite nature.
So you referred to the highest power or the great beyond?
Right. And Khlebnikov combined this with what the futurists called zom. It's often translated as transrational language.
Transrational.
Yeah, it's poetry that relies heavily on the sonic, almost magical qualities of words, moving way beyond strict dictionary definitions.
Which brings up a massive roadblock. The sources emphasize that the artist wasn't just translating Slevnikov's style, they were doing a transposition.
A very important distinction, yeah.
Because if Zom relies on the specific guttural sounds of the Slavic language and the visual shape of the Cyrillic alphabet, you simply cannot do a one-to-one translation into English. The magic would just be lost in transit.
Transposition requires the artist to ask, well, which of these core principles can actually survive the journey into a completely different linguistic ecosystem? So the artist decided to preserve the cosmic scale, the epiphatic refusal to name the highest principle, and the treatment of time as a physical structure. But they had to abandon the untranslatable Russian phonetics.
So it's basically like trying to play a really complex classical piano sonata on a heavily distorted electric guitar.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
You absolutely cannot just copy the sheet music note for note. You have to completely reimagine how to achieve the exact same emotional resonance using a totally different instrument.
Exactly. And that act of reimagining proves that the artist's practice was deeply generative in a strictly literary sense, long before it ever became generative visually.
They were iterating, experimenting with form, writing multiple distinct original poems, just to find the perfect vessel for this concept.
But out of all those iterations, they eventually had to pick one. One to serve as the official canonical text for the artwork.
And the sources insist that any proper understanding of this project requires reading this chosen poem. It's 24 lines, divided into 6 stanzas, written in iambic tetrameter.
Yes, the beating heart of the piece.
I actually want to read a bit of it for you, just to give a sense of it. The first stanza goes, "In cosmic realms where planets wend, a greater force we shall transcend. To plead our case, our truth defend, before the azure judgment send."
And right away, that Klebnikovian influence is incredibly pronounced. But also, notice the diction.
Yeah, I have to push back on that diction for a moment. We are talking about a 21st century digital artist feeding commands into a bleeding-edge AI algorithm. Why on earth are they using words like wend and thee?
It does stand out.
It feels almost artificially old-timey, like someone cosplaying as a 17th century monk. Why say, before the azure, judgments send, instead of just saying, send judgments before the azure?
Well, the archaic English is actually a highly deliberate mechanism. It's meant to align the piece with a centuries-long tradition of English apophatic verse.
Oh, I see.
Think of the lineage of poets like William Blake or even T.S. Eliot in his 4 quartets. By utilizing that specific diction, the artist is signaling that this text isn't a modern pop lyric or a casual blog post.
It forces the reader to engage with the gravity of an ancient conversation about the divine.
Precisely.
That makes total sense when you look at the second stanza. It says, "The clock of life, its ticking hand, relentless, bold, we cannot stand. It carves our paths, designs our fates. As spectral orbs, our hearts berate."
Look at how they handle time there. The clock is not merely a passive machine tracking the hours until you die. It has sculptural agency.
Time itself is actively carving your destiny out of the universe.
Yes, and across all 24 lines, they maintain that apophatic limit perfectly. They never actually name a deity.
It's always a greater force, or the azure, or the great. But the literary commentary points out that the single most important decision in the entire poem is the very last word.
Yes, the final word of the final stanza.
The stanza goes, "So live with grace, embrace the light, for cosmic forces watch the night. In realms unknown, our fates are sealed, to stand before the great, revealed."
Revealed. That choice over any other possible conclusion fundamentally alters the theology of the artwork.
How so?
Well, think about it. If the poem ended on judged, it would be a story about a courtroom verdict. If it ended on redeemed, it would be a story about unearned grace.
But revealed is different.
To stand before the absolute revealed focuses entirely on ultimate visibility. It strips away all the masks of mortal life. It focuses on the terrifying, inalienable possibility of simply being seen exactly as you are.
Completely transparent. That flips the entire dynamic of facing a higher power.
It really does.
Instead of walking into the ultimate cosmic courtroom and seeing a judge sitting up high with a gavel, waiting to throw the book at you, you walk in and there is nothing but a giant, unavoidable mirror.
A profound psychological shift. It's not an action being violently done to you. It's just a state of total, inescapable exposure.
Okay, so we now have this deeply philosophical, canonical poem. What do you assume happens next in the AI generation process?
Well, the obvious assumption is that you open up Stable Diffusion, paste those exact 24 lines into the prompt box, hit enter, and wait to see how the algorithm interprets spectral orbs.
Right, that's what anyone would think.
Which brings us to the most brilliant twist in this entire methodology. They didn't use a single line of this canonical poem to generate the visual art.
Wait, I need to stop you there. Are you telling me the centerpiece of this entire project, this beautiful poem we just analyzed, was completely hidden from the machine?
Entirely hidden.
That is wild.
The artist employed a technique they actually developed called the prompt-poem separation principle. The canonical poem is kept pristine. It's preserved strictly as a literary work.
So it is never reduced to being a functional recipe for a machine.
Exactly.
Then what actually generated the visual artwork? What did they type into the box?
Remember those multiple candidate poems the artist drafted earlier? The unselected sibling poems?
Yeah, the discarded drafts.
Right. The artist took those discarded drafts, chopped them up into fragments and phrases, and used those rejected pieces as the actual text prompts fed into the video generator.
Hold on, I am genuinely confused by this. Doesn't that mean the visual art is literally generated from the bad drafts? The ideas that weren't good enough to make the final cut?
That's one way to look at it, sure.
That seems incredibly counterproductive. Why build your visual masterpiece out of the trash?
Well, it isn't trash. It is raw material. Think of the discarded poems as the scaffolding. By separating the prompt from the canonical poem, the artist achieves two monumental things.
Okay, what's the first?
First, as we noted, it protects the final poem's integrity as literature. Second, it serves as an impenetrable security mechanism.
Oh, because nobody else has access to the discarded draft.
Exactly. It completely defeats reverse engineering, which is a massive issue in the world of AI art.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, if another user tries to recreate this exact video by plugging the published canonical poem into an image generator, they will fail completely.
They might get something broadly similar in tone, maybe.
Sure, but the specific compositional signature of the original is locked away in the artist's private, unpublished notes.
That is incredible. It is like a magician who performs a breathtaking illusion on stage. You admire the finished trick, but the actual mechanical gears making it work under the floorboards were built entirely out of failed prototypes.
Right, the prototypes the magician decided not to show you.
It forces you to acknowledge that crafting the prompt is its own hidden, highly curatorial art form. The prompt is literature, even if it's utilitarian literature meant only for a machine's eyes.
And that utilitarian literature, those chopped-up fragments of Klebnikovian homage, finally gave birth to the visual artifact.
So generating the visual work involved feeding those secret fragments in, and then just combing through countless outputs.
Yes, iterating over and over to find the one composition that could carry the conceptual weight of that cosmic mirror we talked about.
Which brings us to the visual artifact itself. We need to be incredibly precise here because casual viewers often misunderstand what this artwork actually is.
They do, yeah.
The primary artifact is a 4-second video. It was minted on the Ethereum blockchain in April 2023, and it's an 832 by 464 pixel composition.
That specific resolution, by the way, 832 by 464, was simply a standard native generative resolution for the models available at that time.
Oh, okay.
But the video's composition itself is highly structured. It's divided into 3 distinct vertical registers.
Let's break those down. The bottom third, the lower register, features this densely populated, tessellated landscape. The artist notes refer to this area as the metropolis, or Enrof.
Enrof.
Yeah, is that another piece of 1990s Russian philosophy?
It is actually. It connects back to Daniel Andreev, a Russian mystic. He used the term Enrof to describe our physical, mortal plane of existence.
The dense, chaotic, earthly reality.
Exactly.
Okay, so mortal life is anchored at the bottom. Moving up to the middle register, the horizontal band, we have the threshold, and the visual here is wild.
It really is striking.
It holds a pulsing, luminous body that is flanked by a darker sphere, and it's articulated just enough to look like a giant eye, a cosmic eye.
Which serves as the bridge, the coincidence of opposites, between the mortal realm below and the divine realm above.
And then the upper register, the top third of the frame, is filled with the Council of Watchers.
Right. These are massive, somewhat ambiguous, bird-like or fish-like entities floating in the clouds.
And crucially, they are not looking out at the viewer. Their gaze is directed downward, back at Enrof.
The sources place a lot of weight on the fact that there are multiple watchers. Not just one. It's not a single terrifying judge sitting on a throne.
The notes use the term Sobornost for this, right? Can you unpack that?
Sure. Sobornost is a concept deeply rooted in Russian Orthodox tradition. It translates roughly to a spiritual community or conciliarism.
Okay.
In the context of this artwork, it means the ultimate accounting of your life isn't a unilateral verdict handed down by a solitary dictator. It is a collective witnessing.
A community of watchers evaluating the soul together.
Yes, a cosmic jury rather than a single judge.
That perfectly mirrors the poem ending on revealed instead of condemned.
It's all connected.
But here's the most technically fascinating part of the video for me. For all 4 seconds, the image refuses to sit still. It features this relentless signature shimmer.
The shimmer is essential.
The entire visual field is constantly morphing, tearing, and interrupting itself. The watchers drift, the eye pulses, the edges of the city shift. What exactly do they mean by a shimmer?
Well, a shimmer in this context is native frame-by-frame instability. In 2023, generative video models naturally struggled with temporal consistency. They wanted to warp and hallucinate between frames.
Oh, so it's a byproduct of the tech at the time.
Yes. But instead of fighting that tendency or trying to smooth it out, the artist leaned into it via highly specific, undisclosed animation parameters.
So this wasn't just a post-production glitch filter slapped on in After Effects?
Not at all. The model was mathematically wrangled to produce this exact frequency of interference.
But why go through all that technical agony just to make the video look unstable?
Because the instability is the conceptual argument. The shimmer represents the idea that no mortal soul gets a perfectly clean HD signal to the absolute.
Oh, wow.
The encounter with the divine is always mediated through static, interference, and the limitations of human perception.
That is brilliant. And it also visually anchors the work in a very specific historical lineage. The deep, saturated jewel tones, the lack of hard edges.
The way bands of color seem suspended in atmospheric space.
Yeah. The artist is actually putting this AI output in direct dialogue with Olga Rozanova.
Yes, the Russian avant-garde painter.
Right. She pioneered a style called svetopis, or transfigured colorism, way back around 1917.
And if you connect a 1910s avant-garde painting tradition regarding the spiritual weight of pure color to a 2023 AI generative practice, I mean, that is a breathtaking curatorial leap.
They are participating in the exact same historical conversation about what color can achieve when it's freed from painting rigid objects.
Absolutely.
Which brings up a massive point of contention in the sources. We've spent all this time talking about a 4-second shimmering video. But if you look up The Power of Destiny in a catalog or read about it online, you almost always see a still image.
Right, a single frozen frame.
Where does that still image fit into this grand artistic vision?
Well, the truth is, the still image is nothing more than a documentary artifact.
Really?
Yeah, it was extracted after the fact for an entirely mundane reason. The artist was publishing a backstory on a blog. The NFT SurR post and the blogging platform just required a featured thumbnail image.
Are you kidding me?
No, it's true.
People treat that still image as the definitive artwork in galleries and catalogs, and it was literally just pulled because the website needed a header graphic.
I know, it's pretty ironic.
That is wild. That is exactly like judging the cinematography, the acting, and the score of a 3-hour feature film based entirely on the little rectangular Netflix thumbnail that pops up on your TV.
It really is. It completely flattens the reality of the art. It reduces a dynamic, deeply layered process into a static commodity.
Because the still image captures the structure of the composition, sure, but it completely abandons the essence of the work.
Exactly. It abandons the motion, the instability, the shimmer. And the shimmer is the visual analog of the artist's hand. It is the method becoming the style.
Which is why understanding this entire 8-step chronology changes everything.
It really does.
When you realize the journey started by translating a 1990 Russian philosophical text, moved into drafting original Klebnikovian apophatic poetry, involved hiding the rejected drafts inside the prompt machinery just to defeat reverse engineering.
And then culminated in a meticulously parameterized, shimmering video.
Exactly. The whole vending machine myth completely falls apart.
The invisible labor is the true medium here. The project demands that we recognize generative art as a space requiring intense curation, literary invention, and philosophical grounding.
The machine provides the output, but the human provides the friction.
Well said.
So for you listening, the next time a piece of AI-generated art crosses your feed, try to look past the immediate pixels on the screen.
Try to consider the unseen scaffolding.
Think about the discarded ideas, the failed prototypes, the hidden linguistic prompts, and the deeply human decisions that wrestled that machine's output into existence.
Seek out the method behind the surface. Look for the shimmer.
And that journey leaves us with one final, lingering thought for you to carry with you today. We spent a lot of time discussing that apathetic limit and the concept of ultimate visibility.
Standing before the mirror.
Right. If the final accounting of our lives truly is standing before the cosmos to be completely revealed, not graded, not judged, but simply seen with perfect clarity,
And if our everyday actions are echoing out into the swirling galaxies of time.
what piece of invisible labor in your own life are you most hoping gets noticed? What quiet effort, hidden struggle, or discarded draft of yourself are you most hoping gets seen in that final clear light?